Welcome to Prescott Today. I'm Mayor Mengarelli, and we have a very important show for you regarding our upcoming wildland fire season. We have some great guests in Dr. Oher with Powwick. We have our Division Chief Don Devendorf, Justin Haynes with the Forest Service, and our first guest, Prescott Fire Chief Dennis Light. My first guest today is Chief Light. Welcome, Chief.
Well, it's glad to be with you here this afternoon.
Well, thank you so much. Well, we're outside of Station 71 here in Prescott, and we're here with the Granite Mountain Hot Shot Memorial. Can you tell us a little bit more about the memorial?
Well, the statuette here arrived, probably within a week right after the Granite Mountain Interagency Hot Shot crew met their perils down on Yarnell Hill back on June 30th of 13. It was gifted to us and has since held a prominent display here at Fire Station number 71.
Yeah, thank you for that. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself, how long you've been in the fire service, how long you've been in Prescott.
Well, I'll keep it brief. My fire service career has been about 40 years. Over that 40 years, my first career was with the Air Force, U.S. Air Force, and I retired. And then with that following up, I came to Prescott following a 17-year stint. That was a temporary stint in Yuma, but I got to my dream place to live and a great place to be part of the community, and hopefully I'll put the capstone to my career here.
Very good. Tell us a little bit more about kind of your day-to-day activities here with the fire department.
Well, I wish I could say, well, maybe I wish I don't say, is putting fires out is kind of our job. But the reality is my particular role is more of an administrative oversight. We have 57 people that are assigned to fire trucks on a rotating crew basis, which people is my main resource. We can bring a lot of tools to the fire, but you still need firefighters to put the fire out. So with that, managing the priorities of the organization, that of the mayor and council, and that of the city manager, and therefore as a team we kind of collectively work together to make for the betterment of the Prescott community.
Okay, so obviously our fire department is primarily focused on structure, but because I assume of where we are located here in the mountains, you have to also cross-train with wildland firefighting. Tell us a little bit about the differences and how you train for that.
Well, the Prescott Fire Department by its very nature is an all-risk fire department, which means we do fire, we do emergency medical services, we do technical rescue, hazardous material response, and a vast array. We kind of joke that anything the law enforcement can't do, they kind of defer to us to do. With that, here within the Prescott Basin region, we have a very interactive group of professionals that work day in, day out to save the community from the potential wildfire, first by a preventative means, and then secondary to that is if a wildfire should occur, provides us some resources in the local area to be able to execute our jobs very efficiently and effectively.
What are some of the activities that your firefighters take on throughout the year to kind of help suppress or prevent a wildland fire?
Well, we have a full-time equivalence for a couple folks that do fuels reduction.
Okay.
If you look at the greater Prescott region, there's a interlocking means of different landowners, whether they be the federal government, the state government, the Bureau of Land Management, private owners, or the city of Prescott or the region. So with that, we work on the defensible space, and we do that through an assigned fuels reduction crew. And we prescription projects each year in order to provide a defensive mechanism for firefighters, because it all comes back to firefighter safety. And if we can create safe anchor points for the firefighters, they can do a better job in the wildland-urban interface.
You mentioned a lot of agencies. It sounds like we have a lot of real key agreements with these agencies here to make sure that we coordinate in the event of a fire.
Right. I kind of always quickly refer to them as kind of the whites, the greens, the reds, and the yellows. White being indicative of our state land partners, for which they manage our cooperative fire rate agreement should an event occur elsewhere, that they provide a means to cost recover any of the services that we render to other agencies. We have the greens, which is the U.S. Forest Service, partner agency. We're commingled with much of the forest, so we have very good working relations there. Bureau of Land Management, a little lesser partner, but still a partner. And then the other fire agencies, which is the red agencies. Central Arizona Fire and Medical and Prescott Fire are the two kind of the big brothers in the neighborhood, but there's a lot of smaller entities that we work hand in hand to create a better environment for firefighter safety.
Yeah, well, that's really important to have all those agencies working together and coordinating. So is there anything you'd like to tell our viewers as we approach fire season, folks out there that want to kind of help make sure their property is prepared? Anything you might mention to them?
Well, I think one of the big things is one of your upcoming guests is POWIC. And Prescott Area Wildland Urban Interface Commission has been in existence for about 26 years. They're where the community roots are in creating defensible space. For example, I just had a recent visit with a citizen out in Longview, and we're trying to make those right handshakes to allow folks to do their own defensible space. We provide responsiveness to folks that just don't understand exactly what defensible space means.
Right.
It isn't meaning clear cut. What it means is creating an environment that fire is harder to sustain. So we work hand in hand with a number of those agencies, but POWIC, being the community fabric, is key to that particular endeavor.
Yeah. You know, as we started this interview, we talked about the memorial that came down from Idaho, and it was about 5 years ago. We're coming on the 5-year anniversary of the Granite Mountain Hot Shots, losing them in Yarnell. You've got a special project you're working on right now to display some of that memorabilia. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, it's been kind of a long road, but a very fast path. With the eventual sailing off of Station 7 last April, there was a contingent within the community that really wanted to do something with our memorabilia. Through some creativeness and conversation with our Gateway Mall partners, we've been able to come to terms with an agreement that gives us a 1-year lease with an ability to renew for up to 4 more years, in which we can display some of the community's memorabilia and artifacts from the fence project that took place down on Station 7. But it's much bigger than that. The non-for-profit, they're in their infancy, so they're kind of getting their sea legs. But I think with the representation that it has, we have members from family, we have members from the community, we have just affiliates, which are kind of like fire and police, and then we have those community elements. So I think it's very key. They'll get their feet together and get their feet under them. But one of the good things is it will provide for a more permanent display of these artifacts for all the community to be able to enjoy.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you doing that. And so our viewers can expect at the mall by June 30th to see that display up there in the Prescott Mall.
Yeah, that is the intention. Hopefully by the 1st of June that we can have something on display, and that becomes a philanthropic outpouring that folks, because eventually I suspect that they want their own bricks and sticks building to get to and be able to showcase that stuff and create the second portion, which is the learning center element.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for being with us today, Chief. I appreciate what you do in our community to make sure we stay safe, and I wish all of the firefighters and yourself hopefully a good fire season without any major issues. So thank you so much.
That's my pipe dream as well. Thank you.
Well, thanks so much. We're going to come right back and talk to Dr. Oher with POWIC. Our next guest is Dr. Michael Oher, who is the new director of Prescott Area Wildland Urban Interface Commission, also known as POWIC. Welcome, Dr. Oher.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, thanks for being on the show today. So tell us a little bit about the mission of POWIC and kind of the scope of your activities with POWIC.
Well, a brief history of POWIC is that in 1983 there was a fire on Thumb Butte, and when several different fire departments arrived to fight the fire, they found out that their equipment did not match with each other's trucks. In 1990, POWIC was actually formed, and it was really a way to pull together different organizations as well as the public to try to get more attention on firefighting and trying to protect Prescott. Timber Ridge was the first Firewise committee in America. That was founded in 2002.
Okay.
We now have over 35 Firewise committees in Prescott. Over 17,000 properties are included in those, and we have more people trying to come online all the time to become Firewise committees.
Oh, that's great. So you're the new director. How did you get involved with POWIC? How did that come about?
I've actually taken over for Bob Betts, who's a good friend of mine. He turned the reins over to me at the end of last year. Bob was the chairman for 3 years and in fact received a nationwide award last year for being the mitigator of the year. So wow. I think we should take a lot of pride in our community and our Firewise community, that we are really well known nationally. Personally, I became involved. My old orthopedic office was next door to Darrell Willis and his men. So I've known Darrell for many, many years. As far as actually getting into POWIC, it started with a neighbor in our neighborhood starting a bonfire at midnight 3 years ago and not putting it out. In the morning, the winds hit 40 to 50 miles an hour. The fire reignited, and the fire department showed up barely in time to stop the fire from going into the tree under which they'd started their bonfire. Marty Zakowski immediately got us together and formed our Firewise Committee. We are the Prescott Skyline Firewise Committee, and we are the closest to the National Forest, adjacent to Thumb Butte. So we feel that we're a very important preventive measure for the city, and we've been an incredibly active Firewise Committee. There are 114 properties in our neighborhood, 85 homes, and with 2 Firewise grants, we have mitigated about 60 of those properties in the last 3 years.
Yeah, that's great. It's good for our viewers to know that really Prescott and Powwick are really kind of leading the nation in many ways in Firewise communities and these practices of mitigation. So we're kind of coming into the fire season right now, as we know. What are you hearing about the wildland fire season this year?
That this could potentially be the worst fire season we've ever faced. We are in the 20th year of drought. 100% of the state is in drought, and about 5% is in extreme drought. We had very little moisture this fall and winter. Thankfully, we've had a couple rains and light snows recently, but that's not near enough to help us. And so we're really heading into the season trying to alert the public as best we can, and we can do this in many ways. One thing that we hope people will be aware of is we have a Firewise Expo that'll be held adjacent to the downtown Courtyard Square on April 21st from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. this year. We'll have antique fire trucks, new fire trucks, firemen, people from all kinds of agencies there to provide education for the public and teach them how to become Firewise.
Okay, good. So that expo is open to the public. That's April 21st,
Absolutely.
10 a.m. And people can get some real practical tools and ideas on their own properties. What are some of those basic things that some of our citizens could do around their own homes to prepare?
Well, we thankfully have an excellent Firewise mitigation fuel reduction crew with the city. And anyone on their own can go into their property, try to create a mosaic type of pattern of foliage on your property. There's a misconception that you need to scalp your property to make it Firewise, and that's not true. You'd really like to get rid of ladder fuels like scrub oak, manzanita, mountain mahogany, thin those primarily. But in our city, you can actually bring the things that you have chopped down, bring them to the street. You can go online and learn exactly how you pile those sticks adjacent to the street. Contact the proper phone number, and they will come to pick those up for you. Okay,
sounds like there's a lot that we can do as citizens to kind of prepare our property. So I think that's important for our viewers to know.
Absolutely.
So there's a couple projects that we were talking about earlier around outside the city, actually. You were mentioning the Thumb Butte mitigation. Tell us a little bit about that.
This is called the High Valley Project, and we've been working on it for 2 years. Casey Yowell with the National Forest has been involved with this. We talk frequently about it. But they started first at Deering Park and surrounded the west, south, and east side of Deering Park. It's a 100-yard wide hand mitigation project. It's a large crew of men, so you'll hear a lot of chainsaws, and what they'll do is pile up sticks about the size of a car, and then when there's a safer time later in the year, they will burn those particular piles.
Okay.
And the project will continue the 100-yard thinning from Thumb Butte Road all the way along the forest line to the south extent of the city and all the way east to Hidden Valley Ranch. So since the fire, if it comes to Prescott, is most likely coming from those directions, we feel this is a real great fuel barrier for
Very
us.
strategic on that side of town.
Absolutely.
So tell us about Project Andrew, another kind of mitigation project south of town.
On the way out of town on White Spar, there's Hidden Valley Road as you're leaving town. There's a 19-acre property. It's named after Andrew Ashcraft, one of the firemen who perished. There are about 800 ponderosa pines in that area, and this is a logging project where they are going to remove about half those trees. This will create a much safer environment as far as not only fire, but also creating a more healthy environment on the forest floor.
Okay, that's great. It's good to know that those mitigation efforts are happening even outside of town. There's things we need to do on our own properties, but there's a lot happening outside of town to make sure there's a barrier.
Absolutely. And we have a meeting, except for January and July, on the first Thursday of every month. We hold a meeting at the rodeo grounds, which includes all the organizations that we work with.
Okay.
Everyone gets a chance to speak at that meeting and talk about the projects that they are doing. And there have been a tremendous number of projects done over the last 20 years that most of the public, frankly, really doesn't understand the scope of.
Right.
But I think we've done a tremendous amount to try to save Prescott.
Yeah, that's good. So tell us about your website, how people can find more information about Firewise. I'm assuming they could do that on the website. You already mentioned the expo and the public meeting. Any other events?
Well, you can look up POWIC as the full name, Prescott Area Wildland Urban Interface Commission, or the initials, PAWUIC. And we also go by the name Yavapai Firewise.
Okay.
Partly because we now include Jerome and Crown King. We are spreading out away from Prescott, trying to really push people into this Firewise mentality in our entire county.
Well, thank you so much for being with us, Dr. Oher. Appreciate
Thank you very much
being
for
on the
giving me
show.
the time, and remind everybody to please be Firewise.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. Our next guest will be talking to the Forest Service about some of the activities they're doing around our city to keep us safe. My next guest is Justin Hayes, who's a fire prevention officer here at Station 71. Justin, thanks for being with us today.
Good to be with you.
So we're at Station 71, and as a part of Station 71, the Forest Service has a truck here and a crew here year-round. So Justin, tell us a little bit about that interagency agreement and how that works.
Well, the Forest Service likes to work with a lot of our municipal partners and a lot of our partners that border our national forest. It works both ways. So we get a fire in the city, we can help out and assist, use our resources. And then if we have a fire that's in the forest adjacent to city property, your folks will come out and help us. And this agreement has worked very well in the past and continues as far as assisting for your 3 to 5 acre brush fires or grass fires in the area.
Yeah, no, this is great. I did not know, honestly, that the Forest Service had a crew right here at Station 71. I think it's great in terms of making sure that we have the proper resources available when a fire happens here outside of town. So we also have the fire center out at the airport. And I understand this time of year, or I guess in April, you guys are staffing that up for fire season?
Yes, the Prescott Fire Center starts ramping up around April and gets to full tilt in mid-May. We have the hotshot crew, the Prescott hotshot crew that's based out of there. You have a Helitech crew, which starts May 1st for their ship, their helicopter. They have a Type 3 there. And then it also acts as a dispatch center, houses a lot of our overhead, and can actually work as an expanded dispatch center. And then you have the dispatch, and then you also have the capabilities of the air tanker base right there with the airport. That also, they utilize that also for some of the smaller air tankers and what we call lead or air platforms.
Okay, so a lot of activity out at the airport ramping up here in April. We see, I think a lot of our residents see the air tankers that go in and out of there a lot. What kind of area or region do you cover with that fire center out there?
I honestly, it's national.
Okay.
As far as the air tanker base, there's only 18 air tankers that aren't considered seats, and then 9 large air tankers. And those rotate throughout the entire nation as far as need and being called for initial attack fires.
Okay, so we're real fortunate to have that kind of resource here in Prescott at our airport, to have that locally to respond to the wildland fires that might occur.
Yes, a lot of times the air tankers are really good at catching the initial attack, and they're specialized in catching those initial attack fires, those fires that first start. So having the air tanker base close is super beneficial to the community.
Yeah, no, that's great. So tell us, what are you hearing about the wildland season? Sounds like it's pretty dry this year, but from the Forest Service perspective, what are you guys hearing?
As far as everything I was hearing as far as outlook, we definitely didn't receive the moisture that we had received in previous winters. And we did have a good monsoonal push, so we did have a pretty good grass crop. Having said that, everything can change in April, but right now we're still looking at a fire season, as we are every time this year, where things could really dry out. And a lot of times when things dry out, we'll bring in severity resources, but we really do need folks to be mindful and very careful around fire and to help create defensible space around their house.
Yeah, so particularly this season, because of the dry weather and the dry winter, we need to be really careful when we're out in the forest in terms of those kinds of activities that could cause fires out there. We need to be very careful, particularly this year. We've already had a few brush fires that have happened here in the month of March recently, so we need to be really careful.
And what we found in this area is one of our biggest causes of fires is abandoned campfires, and it's really folks preparing and making sure that when they leave their campsite that they put 5 gallons of water on their campsite.
Okay.
I found it takes about an average 5 gallons of water to make it completely out. And when we mean completely out, it's where it's cold to the touch.
Yep, totally out. Well, thank you so much for the work you do here to protect us here in Prescott, and it's great to have the partnership with the Forest Service. Thank you for being with us today, Justin. Appreciate it. And we'll be right back with our next guest on Prescott Today. My next guest is Division Chief Don Devendorf. Welcome, Don. Thanks for being on the show.
My pleasure. Good to see you today.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and how long you've been on the department and your role here.
Well, currently I'm the Division Chief over Community Risk Reduction, which comes with the title of Fire Marshal, which means that I oversee the Fire Code and the Wildland Urban Interface Code. I'm one of 2 division chiefs in the organization, and I've been lucky enough to serve the citizens here for 34 years now. I'm about 2 years away from retirement. Basically came up through the ranks, started before I came to work here as a hotshot wildland firefighter, came here as a firefighter, engineer, paramedic, captain, battalion chief doing shift work, operations chief, EMS chief, oversaw the hazardous materials team and TRT, and now I'm lucky enough to be working in prevention.
Did you mention SWAT and all of that?
Well, that was not on the fire department side, but yes, I've been on the SWAT team for over 20 years.
Yeah, that's great. Wow, lots of different roles with the fire department and the police department in that case. So tell us more about kind of what key issues you're dealing with the public and kind of training for staff, some of those day-to-day roles. And
well, with the training for staff right now, we're constantly training. We try to get 20 hours a month in firefighting type training for all of our personnel every month on top of their hazardous materials and things like that. This time of year, we put everything towards wildland. So we have a wildland refresher, and there's minimum qualifications for that, where the refresher has to go after lessons learned from past fire season. We have to be able to deploy our fire shelters in a set period of time. We have to go through the basics of fire behavior. So all of our people are going to be going through that. On top of that, at this time of year, we're also taking additional classes because there's a thing called a red card for us to be able to fight fires on state and federal property outside the city limits. So we're continually moving up the ladder all the way from basic firefighter, which is a 1 weekend class, up to the incident commander that can take over a 1 million acre fire. So we're constantly moving up that. So this time of year is when we're working on that with inside the organization, as well as all the other training that we have to continue to do. And what we're doing with the public right now is we're putting out a huge prevention message. And the reason for that is we can't make us get moisture. So now it's too late to cross our fingers and hope for snow and hope for rain. So what we know is we have a large crop of fuel that is ready to burn. We live in the high desert. Our humidities only come up during the monsoons. So we have low humidities. We have a southern exposure for a lot of our stuff. We have stuff that's meant to stay dry and live dry because we're in a semi-arid environment, and we have a really hot sun at this altitude. So knowing that we're not going to get the benefit of having moisture come in, now we have to start pushing prevention. And the prevention stuff goes through the Ready, Set, Go program, which the Forest Service is pushing very hard. And you can find out about that by going to ycso.gov, and you can learn about that. We're talking about the Code Red program, which is also on the Yavapai County Sheriff's Office website, where you put in your cell phone and it recognizes where you are. So in case there's a wildland fire coming into the area, or flood or earthquake or whatever, it'll let you know so you can evacuate. So we're trying to get people ready for the idea that this could be one of the worst wildland seasons ever. So start putting your stuff in order, getting yourself on Code Red, and then the next step is to try to get people's behaviors to change so that we don't start wildland fires.
yeah, so a couple important things there, Don, with the Yavapai County Sheriff Office website that people can do with the Ready, Set, Go and this Code Red that you're talking about. It's very important that people go to those websites now and be prepared and have that information from the Yavapai County Sheriff's Office. The other thing interesting, we talked earlier with Chief Light, and we always think of our local fire departments as really structure only. At least that's kind of what I was thinking, and I've learned a lot just doing this interview, that there's a lot of cross training, a lot that our firefighters do to prepare for the wildland season, and you're a large part of that training.
Well, and every person that sits on any seat in a Prescott Fire Department engine is a trained structural firefighter, minimally trained wildland firefighter, S-130, 180, or 190. They're trained in hazardous materials, and they're a minimum of an EMT. And each one of those you have the ability to build on throughout your career. But everyone here is all hazard when they start, and then we just continue to allow them to get training to become more beneficial to the organization and where they can provide more services to the area as they go through their career.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think it's good for our viewers to know that our firefighters have a lot of different capabilities, and because we're in this urban wildland interface, it's important that they have that kind of training. What kind of efforts or different partnerships do you have with POWIC and other agencies like the Forest Service? How do you work with those agencies?
Well, one of the things, POWIC is sort of officially brought together all of the agencies in one place on a regular basis. We've had an unbelievable relationship with the Prescott National Forest for over 20 years now. You see that we have a Prescott National Forest engine in the back. You know, we started that when they first moved off of Highway 69 out by Home Depot because we wanted to keep them on this side of town instead of moving all of their operations out by the airport. Luckily, Darrell Willis and Ed Hollingshead at the time, they were running partners, and they built a program that I heard you talk about it earlier, is like a template for the rest of the United States. We had a fire 15 years ago in Yakashba over the 4th of July, and I happened to be the on-duty chief, and we had just been on an aircraft down at the airport. And as I was approaching the fire, I could see the flames going through the neighborhood, and I was able to, as a structural firefighter, albeit with some history in wildland firefighting, contact the Forest Service. They launched an air tanker that ended up doing a drop through the center of the neighborhood just as I got there, which saved homes. So the idea that it doesn't make a difference what color your truck is lost on a lot of the rest of the United States because of territorialism and that's yours and this is mine. Here we don't have that. So when we go out the door on a wildland fire, we go out the door together. And when we go out the door on a structure fire during wildland season, we go out the door together. So everyone is built into a program that is meant to protect the citizens visiting this area and the ones that live here.
Yeah, no, that's very comforting, I think, for our viewers, just to know how deep those partnerships are and really serves our city really well. Anything else you'd like to tell our viewers here today?
Well, and the big one is practice prevention right now. The Forest Service has a One Less Spark, One Less Wildfire program that pretty much teaches you how not to introduce spark and flames into the environment. We're going to be ready to go into fire restrictions here pretty quick, which is going to cut down on people's ability to have fires at their home, fires in the forest, and worst case scenario, we could end up closing the forest and shutting down all open burning. So please pay attention to the messages we're putting out. They're available from the Forest Service, from the Alpine County Office of Emergency Management, from the Division of Forestry and Fire Management, from the Prescott Fire Department, Central Arizona Fire and Medical, Sheriff's Office. Please go to those sites and start doing some research because we are going to have fires and moisture is not going to keep them from happening. So the idea is to be ready for them.
Yeah, we need to pay attention to all those messages out there, and I appreciate you sharing with the viewers all the different places you can find out. We can't just assume that we can go into the forest and do whatever we want. We need to kind of pay attention, as well as here in our city. We need to be checking to make sure before we take on any kind of burning or anything like that. I'm certain that that's not going to be allowed here real soon. So, well, thanks so much for being on the show. Wish you the best here in the fire season, and that you and our guys will be safe. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
My pleasure.
Thank you for tuning in to Prescott Today. I'm Mayor Greg Mengarelli, and we'll see you next time.